How's it going, everybody? Bryan, Alvarez, and Dave Meltzer here, Wrestling Observer Radio. It is May 3rd, 2018, figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. Got a lot to talk about here today. There is a New Japan show going on as we speak. It's been a big week for New Japan shows. But, it'll be as we speak.
It'll be as we speak in about 20 minutes, yeah.
That's right. Tell us about the show.
I don't know what's going on right now. There's no point. It's the Kenny Omega and Hangman Page and Cody Rhodes and Kota Ibushi and Tama Tonga and Tangaloa and Bad Luck Fale against the Young Bucks and I think Marty Scurll. I don't remember the rest of it off the top of my head, but it's the first of two nights at the Fukuoka International Center Arena. So the
Tanahashi Okada match is tomorrow.
It's Friday.
Sure.
Tanahashi Okada is Friday, with Kushida and Will Ospreay is the other big match on that show, yeah. And we'll see what happens. This is going to be an interesting test. The second night, the Friday show's already sold out, and it's not that big of a building. And if it's Tanahashi and Okada, it should. If it didn't sell out, I would think there'd be something really wrong. But I don't know how ticket sales are for the first night. If they could sell out with Omega against Page, because not so much Omega, but it's still like two Americans in the main event. Well, Kenny's Canadian, but North Americans. And it's not like it's a feud or anything like that. It's just like kind of putting two guys there. It's just, I think just the idea of Page had looked really good, especially in the Jay White match. And I think the whole idea was to have Page look, Page give Omega a really good match before losing because it would help Page and it gives Omega a win because Omega's geared towards something. I don't know if it's Okada. It would make sense if it's Okada. But with Page being hurt, it changes the dynamic of the match. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, as far as the drawing, if they do really well, it is interesting because there's, Naoki Sugabayashi, I think it was yesterday or today, it might have been today, did an interview and talked about if they sell two shows out, if they sell out both nights, they might consider next year moving it to the Fukuoka Dome, which is a pretty big jump in attendance, going from a relatively small arena. I mean, that's the thing. Like if they had like a 15,000 or seat arena there, that would be a better jump than going to the Fukuoka Dome, which probably holds like 60,000 people or some crazy number like that. I don't know the exact number, but it's bigger. Fukuoka Dome's bigger than the Tokyo Dome. So, and it's a much smaller city than Tokyo, and it's much harder to draw at the Fukuoka Dome. I mean, New Japan did do some successful shows there in the 90s, but, wrestling had a lot more mainstream popularity in the 90s than it does now. But it's something that they talked about. Naito, I guess, was talking about how, he would like to see the idea of being able to do 6 dome shows in a year, in Nagoya Dome, Fukuoka Dome, Osaka Dome, Sapporo Dome, all that, Tokyo Dome, of course. But WWE doesn't even do that. So I think that's a long, long ways away. That's asking a lot. There's, especially when you're talking about a company that doesn't really have strong television to try to pull that. I mean, they've got a fervent fan base, but to do those kind of numbers, I mean, that's when you had a lot more people watching wrestling on television than you do now, and that's not going to change because cable is not big in Japan, and it's, the only way is network prime time, and that's just simply not going to happen. Their ratings just aren't going to justify that, so... that's one of the differences between Japan and the United States right now is we have all these cable stations that have good clearances, and they have a ton of cable stations, and wrestling's on those stations, but the amount of people that get cable is so small that it's something, but it's like enough to, for these companies to draw 1,500 people. It's not something where these companies are drawing, except for New Japan, are drawing 10,000 people. And New Japan only does that for a couple of shows a year. So it's just, that's really the biggest difference. When it comes to the business is our cable took off and their cable never did.
So how are the ticket sales going for the Cow Palace coming up in July?
Yeah, they're disappointing, that's not good for us either. But it's
too late now.
Yeah, it's a little over 3,000 tickets sold. I think it's 3,300 was the last number I saw. There's also another 1,000 tickets that they're expecting to sell from or offering to Japanese tourists. The problem with this is that they came back in just a couple of months in such a big building, and they can run a big building, I think, but the problem is that they need to have to run that building, they need a killer main event, and unfortunately, well, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they'll have a killer main event that they can announce.
We don't know anything right now. We don't know any wrestlers. Obviously we know who's likely going to be there, but no wrestlers, no card, no main event, nothing right now.
Yeah, they should have at least announced Okada and Tanahashi and Naito and Omega and the Young Bucks and people like that who you presume are going to be on the show. I know Mysterio they want on the show, but I don't know what his situation is right now. There's a story that Jericho's going to Fukuoka. I guess I would doubt that Jericho would shoot the angle tonight. I suppose it's possible. I think it's more likely tomorrow or Friday, I should say, because Friday is the bigger show of the two. But if he's shooting the angle with Naito, it could be either night. I don't know that he's going. I've obviously read that he is. I have actually been in contact with him, and he didn't really. He I didn't get a good answer, put it that way. It's not like it's a yes or a no. It was certainly said to make me believe it's a no without saying it's a no. So we'll see. We'll see in a couple days if he's there and they do Jericho and Naito at the Cow Palace, and they can announce it on Saturday. They shoot the angle on Friday, announce it on Saturday. Then we'll see how that changes things. I can't imagine them booking the Cow Palace without the idea of a really, really strong card. But unless there's a Jericho match on the card, the biggest match would be, even if there is, the biggest match is the IWGP title match. And the earliest they could announce that would be, we'll probably know that match on June the 11th, because the main event, whatever it is, on June 11th, because we don't even know that one yet. The Okada Tanahashi winner will defend the title against somebody on June 11th. And at the end of that match, somebody will come out and challenge whoever wins that match, and that will probably be the main event at the Cow Palace. So we'll know watching the Osaka Dominion show what the Cow Palace main event is most likely.
So, man, we're talking a month away, and then everybody, if they decide they want to go to the Cow Palace to see that match, we're talking they've got a month to make all of their plans, hotels, flights, and everything like that.
Less than that, yeah. So it cuts it close on fly-ins. So, that's one of the downsides of running so many big shows and the way they book from show to show, is that you, and not being WWE. WWE would just announce a bunch of stuff and then change it. And Japan, they're very much against false advertising, so they have to wait until they get there to announce it, which would be fine if you had, like they do in Japan, where your shows are, you're drawing from a local audience. Some of these shows, like, what was it, the Sumo Hall show, the last Sumo Hall show, if you remember, they didn't really have that card until just a couple of days before the show, and they still sold out. But it's Tokyo, it's their home base. And if they announce it, late, they can get the walk up, and that's fine. It's like you can do that because you have a lot of people, and they're going to hear about the new main event. It'll be in the newspapers there and everything like that. Whereas here, it's very internet, and to draw a big crowd for New Japan in this country, you have to have people fly in from everywhere, because you don't have. It's not like you have a city filled with 10,000 New Japan fans that are ready to go to a show. There's no city like that. But in the country, do you have that? Yes, you do. But to get them to fly in, that's a lot different than to get them to take the train in, and take the train to Sumo Hall. That's so different. So it's part of the. One of the issues that they have. It's the same thing with Australia. When they did that Australia tour, they had so little lead time, and at least like here they have television. Although now again, I watched some of Friday night's show. I didn't watch like the first half hour. I watched the second half hour. I didn't see any mention of the Cow Palace. I presume there wasn't. And that's like, they should be taking out commercials on Access during that show for ticket sales and things like that. I mean, that's on New Japan. I mean, that's just how you would do it here. And as far as I know, they didn't do that. I could be wrong because I said I didn't see the whole show. But yeah, I mean, the idea of announcing the main event in June, and then you're not going to get as many people to fly in as you would if you would announced, the main event now. So, and then you got, and also a lot of people are, gearing for the All In show, which is another challenge. And those tickets go out on sale on May 13th. So it's only,
it's 10 days away.
Yeah, it's only a couple days away. And so.
Well, if you're going to that Cow Palace show, if you go to the front page of WrestlingObserver.com or my Twitter at Bryan Alvarez, Dave and I are going to do another Wrestling Observer Live mailbag. Went very well when we went to New Orleans, so we're doing another one again. And there is a VIP meet and greet. There are only a few tickets left for that. And there's the general Q&A afterwards where Dave and I will be there. We'll have mics. You can stand up and ask your question, and we'll answer all of your questions. And we'll have all sorts of cool things there. So if you want to get in, if you're going to the Cow Palace show, it'll be Saturday, July 7th. VIP meet and greet and a Q&A afterwards. It will air on our video channel as well, so you can check it out there. And the ticket information is up on the front page of WrestlingObserver.com, or it's sticky to the top of my Twitter at Bryan Alvarez, so head up there and check that out. And it looks like we'll be doing something for All In as well that weekend. So if you're in the West Coast or the Chicago area, you can check it out.
I don't know about that one. Anyway, 9:45.
You already committed to it, so you better know about it.
Yeah, it's 9:45 at the San Francisco airport, which is not too far from the Cow Palace. It's about a 10-minute drive, I'd say, from the Cow Palace to...
What's wrong with All In weekend? It's a holiday weekend.
Yeah,
this one at least is head-to-head with the big UFC weekend.
Yeah, well, our show isn't. The UFC's not on at 9 in the morning.
Well, that's true.
But the show, that weekend's... I got a lot of crazy weekends coming up. That May 12th, there's a UFC pay-per-view. I mean, these aren't big shows, but they're both going on at the same time. There's a UFC show from Rio, and Bellator's running in San Jose. So I probably have to go to Bellator. So I don't know how I'm going to work that out and watch UFC at the same time. Luckily, the one thing is that with WWE cutting back on pay-per-views, I have more Sundays free than I expected this year.
Thank God.
Yeah. And
that 2 pay-per-views a month was a disaster. And we knew it going in, and we knew it going out.
Well, it turned out to be, and they readjusted, which is good.
It's good.
Yep, they readjusted. That's great. So
they actually started an experiment of 2 WWE pay-per-views a month, and they began and ended that experiment. And they still have 205 Live on Tuesdays after Smackdown.
Well, they adjust some things and not others. I don't know what to say.
Alrighty, let's talk about the Smackdown show. What'd you think?
It was a show. I mean,
it was a show.
I don't really get much out of it. I was like watching it. I guess my main take when they put that it was Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch and Asuka against Carmella, Peyton Royce, and Billie Kay as the main event. And it was painfully obvious to me that this was not much of a main event. They were trying, but Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, and it's not like they're new, but they're just not up to speed as far as personality-wise they are. But in the ring, this match had a lot of it was not a good wrestling match at all. So yeah, that was tough.
I don't want to have to talk about this, but I'm going to. Do you remember a couple of days ago when we were talking about finishes for that AJ Styles Shinsuke Nakamura match? And I brought up my idea of why didn't AJ Styles give him a low blow, get himself disqualified, and then Nakamura could demand an apology and demand a no DQ match at the pay-per-view?
Yeah, and they did no DQ
They
match.
did that entire follow-up.
I know.
But that's not the finish they actually did at the pay-per-view.
How do you do a double count out to build to a no DQ match?
I have no idea. In fact, you can be counted out in a no DQ match.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more preposterous.
I know. But then again, we built a cage match out of a clean pinfall.
We did.
Yeah. It's like they don't worry about that stuff anymore. And, and again, they're in a position where it doesn't matter anymore. That, like, you don't have to, like, logically progress because, number one, the audience doesn't care. And number two, you're not economically tied to your decisions because the economics are a much bigger picture than
I
show
know,
to show.
But I mean, it's like...
I know.
It's one thing. It's one thing if they don't do things because they're difficult and they don't have to, but these things are easy.
They don't think that far in advance. Look, all they were doing with that AJ Styles Nakamura match was, how do we get out of this match tonight? They weren't thinking, how do we build the next match? Where are we going next? It was just like,
God forbid it's one of the main events on the next pay-per-view.
And it's the pay-per-view.
I mean, you can't think 2 weeks ahead.
And the pay-per-view's only 9 days away. I know. And it's, what can I say? I mean, the proof's in the pudding. They did a double count out to build up a no DQ match, which makes no sense whatsoever. Why would they? Wouldn't you do a DQ to build up a no DQ match?
I would.
I would too. But then again, I wouldn't have booked that show in Saudi Arabia to begin with. At least not book that commentary. That's another issue. My God.
I do like Shinsuke Nakamura as a heel. I thought he was awesome on the show last night.
Oh, he's been great. He's been great ever since. Yeah, he's really good. I like the spot where Samoa Joe distracted AJ and Nakamura did the low blow. I like that. I think Samoa Joe on this show is great.
And he was great on this show. He was great on Raw. He was great on last week's Smackdown. He's just been great on every single show he's on.
I guess. Yeah, he's a great talker, and they have a good main event program in the sense of, I think like a three-way program with AJ and Samoa Joe and Nakamura can kind of get them, a lot of months of good matches with different variations of it. Where, I would not align Joe and Nakamura. I would actually keep them as rivals as well. I think that leads you, and let Joe be kind of, I wouldn't say a tweener because that's kind of like a difficult thing, but you have three guys. They're all after the championship. It makes perfect sense. So I think there's something there. And obviously you got, Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton just underneath that. So, SmackDown's got some good stuff. The, Jeff Hardy and Orton match was added to the pay-per-view on Sunday. And maybe Cedric Alexander and Buddy Murphy. Who knows? They did a nice little deal with Miz trying to rile them up against each other and then it failing. And then Randy Orton then gave Jeff Hardy a RKO after Hardy and Randy Orton beat Shelton Benjamin and the Miz in the tag match. So that was cool. That was good. I'm trying to think what else. So doing something with Sheamus and Cesaro in the New Day. Not excited. Seen it too much. Looks like they're going to put Lana and Rusev back together. Which
good.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, she has been completely and totally wasted as a wrestler. It didn't work. It's not right for her character. And Rusev...
You know what's funny about it, though, is the way they set up the angle. Like, everybody loves Rusev, but it looked to me like they're going to screw Aiden English. He's going to be just kicked to the curb. Yep. Which is like a heel thing to do. So it seems to me like they have no intention of turning this guy babyface, no matter what.
You may be right. Yeah. But if Rusev, Rusev is a tag team with Aiden English, and I think Aiden English has been great on this whole run, and he's helped get Rusev over. But the reality is that they, Aiden English doesn't have a look they like. That's the only thing I could say. His wrestling is fine. His singing is much better than Elias. He's gotten somebody over, like real big, but they're never going to put that tag team over. I mean, we've seen it, because if they were, they'd have done it already. And, you know, Lana and Rusev, they've always had a good main event act together. Rusev and Aiden English is, in their minds, clearly a very mid-card losing tag team act, you know, to give people a few laughs and let them chant. So, yeah, it's best for all concerned to put them back together again. Yeah, so that was pretty much it. The main event women's trios match felt to me too much like overcompensating for the Saudi Arabia show. We have to put the women in the main event this week because we did on Raw, you know, kind of like that. And on Raw, it was a good match. On this one, it just it wasn't a good match. 205 Live, so the big stuff there, they did Hideo Itami and Akira Tozawa against Jack Gallagher and Brian Kendrick. And Brian Kendrick and Jack Gallagher won. Itami basically screwed up. Tozawa got pinned. And then Itami blamed it on Tozawa and shoved him down, walked off on him. So Itami's going full-fledged heel. And looks like he's going to feud with Tozawa, which, you know, it's good matches. I don't know if what they're going to do with it. Buddy Murphy made weight, killed a local guy who they called Liam Louie, and they set up Cedric Alexander and Buddy Murphy, and Buddy Murphy's just playing complete heel. And then Drew Gulak and Kalisto had a match that people were chanting, "This is awesome," in, and it was a really good match. And it you know, Montreal is a much better market for crowd reactions, just for WWE in general. I mean, the Raw attendance was one of the bigger ones of the year. The SmackDown attendance was probably one of the bigger SmackDowns of the year, and that's in the same market. Although there was some sleight of hand there, because what happened was SmackDown had way more tickets sold because Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens were on SmackDown. Then they got moved to Raw, so a lot of the people who bought SmackDown tickets, not Raw tickets, then bought Raw tickets, but they already had SmackDown tickets. So both shows actually did real well. That's why SmackDown did a much better crowd than they usually do, and it was a louder crowd, and wasn't so. I mean, it wasn't so great for 205 Live, but it was better than usual. In the Gulak Kalisto match, it's funny because, you know, there's like an ad. You know, I don't like dive after dive after dive matches. I just feel you keep doing it, it lessens the impact of the dives. But at the same time, in this match, the crowd didn't care until Kalisto's third dive. It's like he did one. It's like, okay. Then he did another one. They were three different ones. Then he did the third one. When he did the third one, the crowd popped, and then they were into the match. Up until then, they weren't really. So in this match, it worked. So that's all I'm going to say about that. The finish was Kalisto went for a moonsault, and Gulak turned it into the Dragon Sleeper, the Gulak. Got the submission. Gulak is pushing himself as the greatest submission wrestler in WWE. So that's his gimmick. And they did AJ and Daniel Bryan. Nakamura and Daniel Bryan last night.
That's right. That was a dark match.
Yeah, I actually saw that match. It was a 7-minute match. It was just low blow finish, DQ. It was okay. I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with it, but it was just there, just like a 7-minute match that was relatively well wrestled. The crowd was real psyched for it at the beginning, and then they just had a normal match. It was fine, but I'm sure that they have potential to do a 10 times better match, with hopefully a better finish too.
Ratings.
Yeah, Raw and SmackDown were down because of the NBA playoffs. I mean, the NBA numbers were huge. NBA's having a big year this year. That's all there is to it. And but SmackDown was still above last year at the same point in time, and Raw's doing about the same. So it's not like these numbers are bad, but they're going to get, they're going to go down. It's just what it is. The only interesting thing, SmackDown was very much more women viewers. Like, women viewers were up 17%, and male viewers were down 15% from the week before. So that's a very different dynamic. I don't know. I'm sure the NBA is part of that, but I don't know why the NBA game would lead to a huge increase in women viewers on Smackdown, but something did. Raw actually was very much more male viewers than usual, so that was kind of an interesting thing for the two shows. But yeah, they were both down a little bit. Bellator, it was their second best number of the year, but a lot of people thought it was a bad number. It certainly wasn't a good number. 750,000 viewers for Fedor and Mir, and that's over two channels, not one. It's like 581 on Bellator and 169 on CMT. I don't. It's kind of hard. What does that mean when you get the same show on two different stations? But it. I don't know. It's it was also a very tough night. They went against. I mean, the competition on Saturday night was ridiculous. You had the one thing about like the NBA playoffs on a Saturday night show, no matter who it is, and NHL is like, yes, you have the national games, okay, and the hockey's so big, and actually on that Saturday, the hockey was not that big. Basketball's, of course, very, very strong right now. But you also have all these other games that are going on Saturday night in hockey and basketball in local markets. And in some of these local markets, the local teams do great numbers. So you also have to consider that. And there were 3 different major boxing shows on television head-to-head with Bellator. There was HBO had fights, Fox had fights, and ESPN had fights. And they pretty much split the audience. They were all... all of them were pretty much doing between 700 and 850,000 viewers. So, there was that too, splitting the fight audience up in a lot of different directions. I thought the Bellator show was, as far as like I mean, there were, I think there was 5 fights. I think there was 4 first round stoppages and 1 second round stoppage. So you got a lot of stoppages. You got a lot of build for Fedor and Mir all night long. You had Chael Sonnen and John McCarthy and Jay Glazer and Mir doing interviews, all building up this match, which ended up lasting 48 seconds. I mean, if that fight had gone longer, the rating would have been higher as well. I mean, it's hard to build a rating in 41 seconds. It's kind of like that's your minute, So those are the breaks.
It's got a message here that allegedly, Chris Jericho has been seen at the Haneda Airport in Japan.
Well, then he's going.
So there you go.
Then he's there.
All right, Keith Lee. Is he officially going to WWE? I guess nothing is official till he's signed, but that seems to be the story.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, he's pretty much going. He's finishing up all of his dates and everything like that. So, going to NXT.
Including a big show named after him, PWG.
Yeah, May 25th. So, PWG did sell out instantly, by the way, which was also yesterday.
And is that for the Globe?
No, that's the
maybe final Reseda show.
Maybe final Reseda show. Yeah, we don't know. I mean, they're going to do the Globe in July, and then they're going to do the Globe again for Bola, which is September 14th through the 16th. So that's okay. So Chicago's one weekend, and the next weekend I'm going to Manchester, and then the next weekend's Bola. God, I'm going to be dead by. And that's the weekend of I think that's anniversary weekend for CMLL as well. Which I was like, I think actually I wasn't going to go this year because I actually was asked about the CMLL anniversary show, and I said, look, I'm going to Manchester the week before, and I'm going to Mexico the week after that. So I'm LA. We'll see. I guess I'll probably go, but whatever. It's tough. I'm not going to be enjoying life if I go to all 3 of those events at all. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
Universo dos Mil passed away.
Yeah, that was really
young.
Sad. 55. To me, that's young. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Heart attack. He's had a bad heart. He had his first heart attack in 2016. And he had a second one last year. So, Yeah. I mean, I watched the Dinamitas in a zillion matches. That's for sure. All the time. He was the youngest of the three brothers. And then in the 90s, 1997 to about 2006, he was a big-time single star. I mean, he has had more tenure as a world champion than probably any wrestler since like Ric Flair and probably more than Hogan. I'm pretty sure. Maybe not, but roughly the same as Hogan. Probably not as long as Flair. I mean, not as long as Bruno, but I mean, he had 7 years as on his three title reigns as CMLL World Heavyweight Champion totaled 7 years. And it's not like their heavyweight titles don't dominate their business like ours do, because they're, realistically, the welterweight and middleweight titles probably mean more than the heavyweight title because they got so many much better wrestlers in the welterweight and middleweight division. But still, he was a heavyweight champion for 7 years, and a cornerstone main eventer for that promotion the whole time, and for years. I mean, really, because the Dinamitas mostly worked main events, from the mid to late 80s. He started with the Dinamitas in 85. The two brothers, Cien Caras was around in the 70s as a singles, and then him and his brother, Mascherano dos Mil, were a regular tag team probably, by the early 80s, 81-ish. And then he joined them to make it a trio like in 85. So he had, probably about a decade as part of this famous trio. Then he had a second decade as a singles, in a lot of trios matches, but as a singles world champion. And, after that, he had a lot of big stip matches, big feud with Perro Aguayo, huge feud with Perro Aguayo. Later feuded with Perro Aguayo Jr., where Perro Aguayo Jr. beat him for his, I think he beat him for his, did he beat him for his mask or his hair? I'm trying to remember. No, he beat him for his hair because Connect beat him for his mask, which was the DQ finish and everything like that at one of the really big shows. And it was a big four-way match. And, so he had a long career. I mean, not by no means a great wrestler, but he was, positioned well, good name. His sons wrestled. Both of his sons wrestled last night. One had wrestled in Guadalajara and one wrestled at Arena Mexico, and they had tributes to him in both cities. So, yeah, it's always sad. He died. Oscharo died a couple days earlier, who was not as well known, but I mean, he was. Oscharo was still a star in the 80s, in the 70s. Not a superstar, but he was a star, and he headlined an anniversary show, and had a big hair match in Tijuana with Conan.
Tell us about this Leslie Smith lawsuit.
Well, it's not a lawsuit, but she's filed a claim with the National Labor Relations Board about her being, whatever it is, whatever word you want to use it, her not being offered a new contract by UFC.
I think she used the term bought out.
Well, this was what happened was, I mean, her last fight.
They paid her and then released her, right?
Well, no. They paid her and then they said, "You're done."
Yeah.
I mean, it was the last fight. She had one fight left on her contract. She didn't fight that fight. They paid her for that fight, and then said, "We fulfilled the terms of your contract because we're paying you." And they paid her a win bonus too, just to get. And then they said, "And we're not going to offer you a new contract." She was ranked in the top 10. She's an exciting fighter. She'd won her last two. It's very obvious why, which was because she was trying to start a union. And it's illegal to fire someone for trying to start a union. Now, of course, UFC can say whatever they want to say. There's no rule that they have to book somebody. I mean, if she didn't start a union, would they fire someone in the top 10 who's having exciting fights and on a winning streak? No, they wouldn't. But you have to prove that, which is a lot more difficult, even though, I mean, I can tell you common sense. there's any doubt in my mind of what it was, but being able to prove that to the NLRB, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go. So she filed a claim, claiming that it would scare people to take a stand, which is obviously what it's designed to do, is exactly that. Yeah. Scare people from getting unionized. So it's going to be an interesting case to follow.
And Nate Diaz talking about potentially fighting again.
Yeah, they're trying to get him for the August show at the Staples Center. And, we'll see. It looks like that they are hoping for Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov. So they're paired up. I've heard some talk of Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez, although both of them want a title match. But maybe, to be fair, to get a title match, they should fight each other. Kevin Lee wants a title match. So it's, Diaz would sound like Kevin Lee. Now, is Diaz and Kevin Lee that big of a match to pay Diaz what he probably wants? Unless Diaz just has decided that has spent money and feels now he needs to make money, and I don't know the answer to that. Because he made so much money on those McGregor fights that I thought he was kind of set for life. And he was kind of like in this thing of, I don't really want to fight, and I'm set for life, so I won. But, who knows? I mean, set for life, there's always worries about being set for life. A lot of things can happen, and he can still make a lot of money, and if he puts it off for too many years, he's going to get older, and that's not good. So, he can still make money fighting. But we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see if he can move numbers without Conor McGregor. He's obviously a famous guy, but we don't, he never was he never was that big of a deal numbers-wise. Him and Benson Henderson did a very good television rating, but as far as big, he'd never done big pay-per-view numbers before Conor. Then he did giant numbers with Conor.
Let's jump into the mailbag here, mailbag at WrestlingObserver.com. Mark here says, with all of the touring and shows this year, do you believe New Japan is starting to stretch itself out too thin? Does there seem to be less of a buzz around the product than last year?
Yeah, I think a little bit, maybe just the time of the year. I think that it'd be good for them. I think that they need a jolt of something new for sure. Jericho could be it, but Jericho's only going to do a couple dates at best. Their wrestling has been real good, but if I look their business is doing well, the big shows are doing well. There's definitely weakness at Korakuen Hall. The last couple of shows at Korakuen Hall have not done as well as you usually would expect. There was not a big rush on tickets for just New Japan coming to the Cow Palace alone. Was not that hot of a ticket seller. So there's something to it. I don't know that it's spreading too thin as much as Omega and Ibushi as the Golden Lovers was something new, but and they could be big, but it's not like that they've it's not like there's another team like that out there. Because there are other teams like Lance Archer and Davey Boy Smith, God bless them, or Evil and Sonata even. They're like tag team level guys. It's almost like you would want I don't know. It's like Tanahashi doesn't have a real partner, or Okada, but something like Okada and Ishii as a team, or Okada and Goto as a team. Something like that where you've got guys like that against the Golden Lovers. And it's there's some stakes, or even the Young Bucks did real well with them in Long Beach. But then you've got to make that work in Japan. You've got to start having the Young Bucks beat all the heavyweight teams, so to make that thing work. So we'll see. I got a lot of Ghetto's got a great track record right now. He took this company from where it was literally a dying company, and turned it into a very successful company. So he has a lot, but there's another thing. every booker does burn out. I mean, that's just the reality. They all do. And it's been years. I mean, usually the rule of thumb is that after a year or two, most bookers burn out, and he's been out in this position for, whatever it's been, 7 years, 6 years, 7 years, I think. So yeah, it's, we'll see. We'll see how it all goes. We'll see with, Dominion's going to be a big test. G1's not going to be so much of a test because G1 is, you know who's going to be in G1. G1 will do well. How well they'll do for three dates at Budokan Hall, which is a bigger building than Sumo Hall, I don't know. I mean, there's, I don't suspect they'll get 3 sellouts. But if they sell out the finals, that's a good sign. If they sell out Dominion, that's a good sign. The card in Dominion and the Cow Palace are going to be some tests. The Super Juniors are running Tokyo too much. I mean, that's going to be interesting. But for quality, I mean, last year's Super Junior was the best Super Juniors tournament ever. And this year, it's pretty much all the same guys. So it's probably going to be a good tournament. Probably going to be a great tournament.
This person here says, does WWE have the entire AWA video catalog? Are there other episodes they have but have not yet put up?
Probably. There's probably a lot of stuff they haven't put up. But they own the whole library, whatever was saved. The thing that people don't realize is most of these promoters didn't save a lot of stuff. So there's really not a lot saved out there. But yeah, WWE's got everything. There is definitely a lot of older stuff that they haven't put up.
This person also wants to know, what was the big territory in California? Who has the rights to that tape library?
Well, there were 2. Roy Shire, who saved nothing at all. The only Roy Shire tapes that are around in circulation were tapes Buddy Rose, got because Buddy Rose got a VCR before anyone else, and he would tape some of the TV shows. Los Angeles was Mike LaBelle's territory, and he saved some stuff, but it was the stuff long past its peak. And as far as I know, he passed away, so his family would own that library. I never heard of anyone buying it. There wasn't a lot left, and there wasn't a lot good. I mean, if the promoters knew, if the promoters had foresight, but they all thought they were saving money by taping over everything. And, again, and the biggest matches were never taped anyway. San Francisco, our biggest matches, nobody ever taped them. The only stuff is there's some 8mm film that, like, Dorothy Hopkins, I think it was Dorothy Hopkins, who was a ringside regular when I was a kid. She shot some of the stuff at the Cow Palace in the 60s, and I don't know how much of that actually has survived, but I know she shot it, but Roy Shire never did. None of those matches at the Cow Palace were taped until the late 70s, long after the peak of the territory, and then he would sometimes bring a camera in and tape it, but even then it wasn't regular, and I doubt it probably erased over all that stuff anyway. The big Friday night matches in Los Angeles were rarely taped. I think the only ones that were taped that I know of would have been the ones taped by when New Japan or All Japan. Well, it was never All Japan. When it was New Japan, sometimes taped there, and JWA, on Nippon TV, taped some Olympic Auditorium shows when Baba and those guys would come in the 60s. Ricky Dozan, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's just not a lot.
This person here says, could WWE be fined or be paid somewhat less than expected for breaking the rule about showing women in that video package in Saudi Arabia?
That's up to the government. I don't know. I mean, WWE, it's whatever they say. I don't know what they're going to say. So I don't really have an answer to that.
This person here says, is it true that a promotional war between Georgia Championship Wrestling and an outlaw group is the reason for Tommy Rich's 5-day run with the NWA title in 1981?
No, not at all.
Why don't you tell him what really happened?
He got the title. Jim Barnett pushed for a 5-day title run. Got it. They had a storyline going on at the time where Tommy Rich retired from wrestling, actually went to back to Memphis, and because he had lost a Harley race, and he wasn't going to come back unless he could win the title from Harley Race, so he came back, and if he didn't win the title from Harley Race, he had to retire again. So he had to win the title. So he won the title for 5 days, lost it, and in the long run, it was a bad move because they'd spent so much time building him to win that championship that when he lost it in 5 days, it was like he did it, but it meant nothing. Plus, like, the big matches weren't even. I think that one of the matches was in, God, what cities were they in? Like Macon, and the other one was in Gainesville. So they're in these like little cities. I remember Barnett telling me that they booked him in the little cities. Maybe Augusta. I think it was Augusta and Gainesville, if I remember correctly. I could look it up, but I mean Gainesville, I remember. And I think the Monday was Augusta. So I remember Barnett saying that, like, well, we thought that, like, if we put it in the small towns, that it would build up the attendance for the small towns because we had a world title change, and it didn't make a difference at all. So that was the idea. It didn't really matter. And Tommy Rich was hurt. I mean, he still, he was still on top for several more years, but he was hurt. It hurt him, to win. It hurt Dallas when Kerry Von Erich lost the title back to Ric Flair so quickly after winning it. Dallas still had a couple more good years, but there was an edge that was taken off, and there was an edge that was taken off Tommy Rich by doing that. Those 5-day title runs, I mean, they may have worked for Baba in Japan, but Dusty wasn't hurt by his, but that's because they had a great storyline on Dusty losing when he lost to Harley Race. But as a general rule, I mean, I don't think that they historically have been bad for the person who wins as opposed to good.
This person here says, what was the typical fee to book Andre the Giant in 1970, and what was Vincent J. McMahon's percentage?
I don't know what his percentage was, and it wasn't like it was a guarantee. It was just, I think it was supposed to be like a percentage of the house, similar to what the world champion would make. So maybe like 10% of the house, maybe negotiable. I'm not, I think that a lot of promoters probably would have paid less than 10%. But if Andre generally was going to boost your gate a lot more than 10%, so it was worth paying the 10% if that's what that was being asked. I know that when he would come here, he would triple the gate, so 10%'s a bargain. I don't know if there was like a flat minimum. There probably was, but I don't really know all the details on booking Andre. I mean, Andre worked a lot of really small territories and worked a lot of really small towns. It wasn't like Andre was out there only working the big shows. And, McMahon always wanted to book Andre away as much as possible because he thought the more Andre worked in his own territory, the less Andre would mean. So he, that was one of the reasons, like, anyone who wanted Andre was going to be able to get him. Even like, I mean, there's places that Andre went that the world champion didn't even go. And it's like, I always wondered, like, why? But the reason was Vince just wanted him. Vince didn't want him around that much. He wanted him around some because he was a draw, but he was very careful. He didn't want to overexpose him in his own markets.
This person here says, considering how popular the WWE product is in the UK, how is it possible that Raw only draws less than 50,000 viewers a week? What am I missing?
It's on Sky. It starts at 1 a.m. That's probably part of it right there. But, yeah, that's the two reasons. And it's not as popular as it once was as far as the television product goes. They still draw at the house shows, though. But their last tour wasn't as successful as they have been in the past either. But yeah, you're drawing that many people, but yet you're still doing some big business. When they run London, they can run London and do $1 million gates. I mean, they do real well. Manchester, if you tape TV in Manchester, the Raw will do well. Smackdown, not necessarily so well.
This person here says, on the Tuesday version of Observer Radio, Dave said that Marufuji was the best at doing what needed to be done at the right time. Could Dave elaborate on what he meant by that, possibly give an example? I love Marufuji. Really want to see the nuances Dave is talking about so I can further appreciate his work.
When I say that, it's like he'll throw something at a time and a place that I'm not expecting it, and based on crowd reactions, they aren't either. So, and it works in the context of a match. So to me, that's doing the right thing at the right time. If you can do a cool move, it's not even necessarily a cool move. It can be anything. Do something to get your attention at a time when your attention is lagging, at a time when you're not expecting it, when it's not, doesn't feel like it's part of the pattern of a match and you're expecting it. So I think that when you get people's attention and you jar them in a match many times, and you do cool stuff or new stuff or stuff that people don't see coming, to me, that's doing things, knowing how to work a match and knowing how to lay out a match and doing stuff. I just noticed when I watch Marufuji, I see that happens a lot. It's not even like great big moves. Other guys can do a lot more impressive moves, but Marufuji seems to get the most out of his moves.
This person here says, does Dave have any information about the live events WWE is going to do in Brazil in July? A little more than 5 years after the last time they came, and a show being canceled because of an alleged low ticket demand. Could this be considered their last chance for the country?
No, they're very bullish on Brazil. That's why they've signed up, those wrestlers from Brazil. The feeling is, when it comes to international, WWE is way ahead of the curve, in the sense that they are not sitting back and waiting until we can make money in these places. They're sitting there going like, we are going to be a worldwide brand, and we're looking at these places, whether it's the Middle East where they can make a lot of money because there's rich people who will bring them in, whether it's India and China where there's no money to be made, but they believe because the populations are so huge that there will be money in the future. And Brazil kind of fits into that because Brazil, the thing with Brazil is that UFC makes a ton of money in Brazil. More money UFC makes more money in Brazil than WWE makes anywhere except for United States, I think. More than they make in Canada, more than they make in England. So they look at that and go, there's potential here in this country, because there's money in that country from whether it's TV money or whatever that they're not getting. But if we make some stars, we can get that TV money. That's the goal. So I think that a lot of people will look at this stuff and think it's the short game, but they're playing the long game and they're probably pretty smart to be doing it. It's going to struggle. I mean, and again, it's possible India and China may never materialize. And they're not going to for years and years, and quite frankly, the people who they're hiring, with their shelf life, who knows when it'll be, and but they're trying to get they're setting their sights on it now, which is probably a good thing. They're trying to be ahead of the curve, but that's why when I say they will not give up on Brazil, because Brazil is one of those key markets. If they do badly, if they do badly, they'll just chalk it up to it's not ready, not give up on it. If it was some place where they didn't think it was important and there was no, whether it didn't have a large population or there wasn't a lot of television money, then yes, they may give up on it. But Brazil doesn't fit into either of those categories. They got a good population and they got potentially, some TV money.
All right, everybody. On that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. The New Observer is up on the front page right now, so head up there and check that out. Back issue of The Observer went up on Monday. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of shows over the next couple of days, so check it out. And that is it. We will talk to you again after a while.